What if a man who hunts vampires in the shadows of Earth suddenly found himself standing on the bridge of a starship, staring into the infinite darkness of space and realizing the darkness was staring back? What if the greatest vampire hunter in the Marvel Universe wasn't just fighting monsters in alleyways anymore, but something far older, far colder, and far more organized than anything he had ever faced? And what if the United Federation of Planets and Alliance built on science, diplomacy, and hope suddenly had to confront a truth it was never prepared for? Because in the year 2374, aboard the USS Enterprise under Captain Jean-Luc Picard, something impossible is about to happen. A spatial rift tears open near the neutral zone. Not a natural anomaly, not a Romulan experiment, something else. Something that hums with ancient hunger. And from that rift falls a single man, black coat, sunglasses, silver sword, blood on his hands. His name is Blade, and he is not alone. The Enterprise's sensors scream as the anomaly pulses again like a heartbeat echoing through subspace. Lieutenant Commander Data tilts his head, pale gold eyes flickering. "Captain," he says calmly, "the rift is not closing, it is expanding." Picard's voice is steady, but there's tension beneath it. On screen, the view screen blossoms into a swirling wound in space, a vortex of violet lightning and crimson mist. The anomaly spits out debris, metal fragments, dust, and then something else. A body. Transporter Room 3 erupts in light as the broken man materializes. Security officers raise phasers instantly. The stranger collapses to one knee, hand gripping the hilt of a gleaming sword etched with strange runes. He looks up slowly. His eyes are not fully human, not fully anything. "Where am I?" he demands. Dr. Beverly Crusher kneels beside him, scanning with her tricorder. Captain, his physiology is unusual. Human DNA, but altered. Enhanced strength. Accelerated healing. And she hesitates. "And what?" Dr. Picard asks. "His blood chemistry shows resistance to a viral pathogen I can't identify. But there are markers. Similar to hemophagic parasites." The man stands abruptly, faster than security can react. Phasers lock onto him. "I don't know what Starship Cosplay Club I just landed in," he says coldly, scanning the room. "But if you don't want to die tonight, you're going to tell me if there are vampires on this ship." The word hangs in the air like a bad joke. Data blinks. "There are no documented species within Federation records identified as vampires." Blade's jaw tightens. "Then you better update your records? Because out in the darkness, something ancient has followed him through the rift. And it's hungry. What if the Federation's greatest starship was already infected, and no one, not even Captain Picard, knew it yet? What if the anomaly that dragged Blade across universes wasn't an accident, but a door, and something stepped through it before he did?" Blade doesn't wait for explanations. He doesn't care about prime directives or interstellar treaties. His instincts are screaming. "They're here," he says, scanning every face in the transporter room. "I can smell it." Worf's hand tightens on his phaser rifle. "Captain, I do not detect any threat." "That's the problem," Blade mutters. "You won't. Not until they want you to." Picard steps forward, composed but wary. "Mr. Blade, is it? You're aboard the USS Enterprise? We are explorers, not your enemies. If you believe a hostile life form has infiltrated this vessel, you will provide evidence." Blade studies him. Calm eyes, measured tone, authority without fear. He respects that. "Evidence," Blade replies. "You're standing in it." He turns to Crusher. "Run a full blood analysis on your crew. Look for anomalies, hemoglobin mutations, viral coding that shouldn't exist." Crusher frowns. "Starfleet medical protocols already screen for over 4,000 known pathogens. Add one more," Blade says quietly, "because the ones I hunt, they don't show up on your polite little tricorders." On the bridge, Data reroutes sensors to analyze the anomaly again. "Captain, the rift is emitting low-frequency subspace pulses. The pattern resembles a beacon." "A beacon," Picard echoes. "Yes, sir. It appears to be broadcasting coordinates. Our coordinates." A chill spreads across the bridge. In sickbay, Crusher runs the scans anyway. More to calm the stranger than out of belief, until the tricorder beeps. She freezes. "Captain," she says, overcomes. Voice tight. "I'm detecting irregularities in crewman Claire's bloodwork, Vulcan physiology. But there's an unknown retrovirus integrated at the cellular level." Blade's head snaps toward her. "Where is she?" Before Crusher can answer, the lights flicker. Deck 12 reports a power fluctuation. Then Deck 9. Then screaming. Security teams rush through the corridors. They find crewman Clara hunched over a fallen ensign. Her eyes glow faintly amber. Blood stains her uniform collar. She turns slowly. Her fangs slide into view. Worf fires first. The phaser blast hits her center mass. She staggers but does not fall. Her speed is inhuman. She slams Worf into the wall, denting Duronim. 2 more security officers go down before Blade arrives, coat billowing behind him. "Move!" he shouts. He draws his sword in one fluid motion. The silver blade hums not with technology, but something older. Clara hisses, lips curling back. "You don't belong in this universe, Daywalker," she snarls. The word echoes down the corridor. Blaine's eyes narrow. "Yeah, neither do you." She lunges. What follows isn't Starfleet combat training. It's brutal, close, personal. Blade dodges her claws, slices through her arm. Blackened blood hisses against the deck plating like acid. Worf struggles to his feet. Stunned she is, stronger than a Klingon. Vampire virus enhances everything. Blade grunts, ducking another strike. Strength, speed, rage. He feigns left, then drives the blade through her chest. The corridor fills with a piercing shriek as her body convulses on, then disintegrates into ash. Silence. Smoke curls toward the ceiling. Starfleet officers stare at the pile of grey dust where their crewmate once stood. Crusher scans the remains. She's gone. Completely. Picard arrives moments later, gaze steady, but darkened by the weight of command. "You were correct," he says, quietly to Blade. Blade wipes the blade clean. "No," he replies. "This is just the beginning." On the view screen, the anomaly pulses again stronger now. Data's voice cuts through the tension. "Captain, long-range sensors detect multiple vessels emerging from the rift." The screen shifts. They are not Federation, not Romulan, not Klingon. Sleek, black, organic curves like predatory insects. Their hulls seem to ripple, as if alive. And at the center of the formation, a massive ship shaped like a jagged crown. Picard's jaw tightens. Hailed them, no response. Instead, one of the smaller vessels breaks formation and accelerates directly toward a nearby Federation colony. Blade stares at the screen. "That's not a fleet," he says quietly. "That's a feeding ground." Picard turns to him. "Then we will intercept." Blade shakes his head slowly. "You don't understand, Captain. In my world, vampires hide in the shadows. They manipulate governments, control corporations. They don't wage open war." His eyes harden. "But if they're showing themselves like this..." He looks back at the swarm of dark ships blotting out the stars. "Then they've already won somewhere else." The Enterprise jumps to warp, racing toward the colony. And deep within the alien flagship, in a chamber lit by crimson bioluminescence, a pale figure with elongated features watches the Federation starship approach. Its voice echoes like silk over steel. "The Daywalker has brought us a new universe." It smiles, revealing rows of serrated fangs. "And this one is ripe." What if the Federation's brightest ideals, peace, diplomacy, understanding, were completely useless against the species that sees every living being as cattle? What if Captain Picard's greatest strength, his belief in reason, was about to be tested by something that does not reason, only feeds? The USS Enterprise drops out of warp above Vega Colony Ivy. What they see is not a battle, it's a harvest. The colony's defense satellites drift in ruins. Power grids flicker weakly across the planet's surface. The alien vessels, sleek and black like predatory blades, hover over major population centers, projecting crimson beams that pulse rhythmically down into the cities below. On the view screen, Picard's face hardens. "Report." Data's fingers dance across his console. Life sign readings indicate widespread biological suppression. The energy beams are not weapons in the conventional sense. They appear to be extracting. He pauses. "Extracting what?" Riker demands. "Blood, Commander." Silence crashes over the bridge. Blade stands near the tactical station, arms folded. He doesn't look surprised. He looks furious. "They're not just feeding," he says. "They're storing it. Stockpiling." Worf growls low in his throat. "Dishonorable parasites." Picard straightens in his chair. "Open a channel." Static answers. Then the screen shifts. A face appears, pale, elongated, eyes like molten amber. The creature's skin has a faint crimson sheen, veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. It does not resemble any known Alpha or Beta Quadrant species. Its smile is deliberate. "Jean-Luc Picard, it says smoothly. "We are aware of you." Picard's composure does not crack. "You have violated Federation space and attacked a civilian colony. Cease your actions immediately and withdraw." The creature tilts its head slightly. "You misunderstand. We have not attacked. We have begun integration." Blade steps forward into view. The alien's smile widens. "Ah," it whispers, "our lost Harbinger." Riker glances at Blade. "Harbinger." Blade doesn't look away from the screen. "They used the rift. Followed my blood signature across universes." The alien nods faintly. "Your unique genetic anomaly, human yet resistant, was the perfect key. When you were pulled through the veil, you left it open. We merely stepped across." Picard's voice sharpens. "Who are you?" The creature bows its head slightly. "We are the Sanguinar Dominion." The name lands heavily. "We have transcended the crude inefficiencies of individual predation. Entire galaxies sustain us. Civilizations flourish beneath our governance until their purpose is fulfilled." "Purpose," Picard repeats coldly. "To nourish." On the planet below, a city block erupts in flames as Resistance fighters attempt to disable one of the crimson beams. The beam intensifies. Life signs vanish by the thousands. Crusher's voice cuts in over, comes from sickbay. "Captain, the planetary casualties are catastrophic. We're losing them." Blade's jaw tightens. "They're converting some too." Picard turns sharply. "Converting? They don't just drain," Blade says. "They infect. Turn survivors into soldiers." As if on cue, data announces multiple transport signatures detected. Inbound. The bridge lights flicker. Security officers materialize in defensive formation, but they're too late. 5 figures appear in the center of the bridge, in a shimmer of crimson light. They wear remnants of Federation uniforms. Their eyes glow, their fangs glisten. One of them, Lieutenant Marquez from Engineering, smiles faintly. "Resistance is inefficient," she says softly. Chaos explodes. Worf fires immediately. Phaser blasts, slamming into the attackers. To fall but rise again, wounds sealing with sickening speed. Blade draws his sword mid-motion, slicing through the air. Aim for the heart, silver or ultraviolet. Riker grabs a fallen security officer's phaser and adjusts the frequency. Data. Modulate to maximum UV output. Data complies instantly. The bridge becomes a war zone. Phasers scream. Consoles spark. One of the infected officers moves with impossible speed, slamming an ensign into the ceiling before Blade intercepts, blade flashing in a lethal arc. Ash scatters across the command floor. Picard doesn't flinch. "Computer," he commands, "initiate internal force fields. Contain all unauthorized personnel." Force fields snap into place around the remaining attackers, trapping them mid-lunge. They snarl and slam against invisible barriers, eyes burning with hatred. The alien leader watches calmly from the view screen. "You see, Captain," it murmurs, "your species adapts quickly. It makes you desirable." Picard's voice turns glacial. "You will withdraw from this system immediately." The creature's gaze shifts to Blade. "You cannot stop evolution, Walker, in your universe. We hid in shadows. Here, we will rule openly." The transmission cuts. Outside, the crown-shaped flagship begins descending toward the planet's atmosphere. Data's tone sharpens slightly. "Captain, the flagship is deploying a planetary-scale energy matrix. Projected completion time, 17 minutes. Blade looks at Picard. "If that field locks in," he says quietly, "everyone down there belongs to them." Picard stands. "Then we don't give them 17 minutes. He turns to Riker. "Prepare an away team." Blade steps forward immediately. "I'm going." Worf joins him without hesitation. As am I. Data inclines his head. "I will accompany you. My positronic matrix is immune to biological infection." Blade smirks faintly. "Good, because this is about to get messy." As the transporter hums to life, Picard's voice follows them. "Bring back survivors," he says. Blade's reply is low. "I'll bring back something." The away team materializes in the burning streets of Vega Colony. The sky above is no longer blue. It's red. The massive flagship looms overhead like a bleeding sun, its energy tendrils piercing into the planet's core. And in the distance, thousands of glowing eyes turn toward them in unison. Blade exhales slowly. "Welcome to the night shift." What if the away team's mission to save a colony wasn't a rescue operation at all, but a trap designed to capture the one man the Dominion truly wanted? The streets of Vega Colony 4 are choked with smoke and ash. Buildings burn in eerie silence, their emergency alarms long since silenced by power failure. For the only sound is the low, rhythmic hum of the crimson energy matrix, spreading across the sky like a tightening web. Blade steps forward first, boots crunching over shattered transparestial. His senses are alive, every nerve tuned to the unnatural pulse saturating the air. "They're close," he mutters. Worf scans with his tricorder. "I detect life signs approaching. Hundreds." Data's golden eyes flick upward toward the massive flagship looming overhead. The planetary energy matrix is altering atmospheric composition. Oxygen levels are dropping. Ultraviolet radiation is being filtered. Blade glances at him sharply. "They're terraforming, not precisely," Data replies. "They are creating optimal environmental conditions for their species." "For livestock," Blade corrects. A distant scream pierces the smoke. The away team moves. They round a corner into what was once a public plaza. Now it is a feeding ground. Colonists kneel in rows beneath one of the crimson beams, eyes glazed, bodies trembling as energy siphons from them in shimmering streams toward orbit. Standing among them are figures nudely turned. Their movements are stiff, confused, but their hunger is clear. One of them looks up. A child. Blade freezes. For a fraction of a second, the hardened hunter falters. Worf does not. He raises his phaser rifle. They are lost. Blade grabs the barrel, lowering it. Not yet. The child's head tilts unnaturally. Fangs slide into place, and then the entire plaza moves. The newly turned surge forward in a wave of feral speed. Defensive formation. Worf roars. Phasers fire in bursts of ultraviolet modulated light. Several attackers disintegrate instantly, but for every one that falls, 3 more leap over the ashes. Blade moves like a shadow given form. His sword arcs in silver crescents, severing limbs, piercing hearts. Ash fills the air like black snow, but they are being herded. Data processes trajectories mid-combat. Their attack pattern suggests coordinated guidance. We are being directed toward the central beam. Blade realizes it too late. The ground beneath them fractures as crimson energy erupts upward, forming a cylindrical barrier around the team. The infected halt at its edge, hissing but no longer advancing. The trap snaps shut. Above them, the flagship's underbelly opens like a blooming wound. A column of scarlet light descends. 4 figures materialize inside the barrier. They are not newly turned colonists. They are ancient. Their armor appears grown rather than forged. Organic plates fuse to pale flesh. Their eyes burn brighter than the rest. One steps forward. "We are the Hemarch Council," it says, voice resonating directly inside their minds. "And you, Daywalker, are an anomaly we intend to correct." Blade wipes ash from his blade. "Get in line." The Hemarch smiles faintly. "You misunderstand. We do not seek your death." The crimson beam intensifies, scanning Blade from head to toe. "Your hybrid nature is the key to surviving this universe's stellar radiation. With your genetic template, our species will walk in daylight across 1,000,000 worlds." Worf growls. "We will not permit this." One of the Hemarch flicks its wrist. Worf is lifted off the ground by invisible force, slammed into the energy barrier. His armor cracks. Data lunges to intercept but is struck by a telekinetic blast that sends him skidding across the plaza, sparks flying from his shoulder joint. Blade charges. He reaches the lead Hemarch and drives his sword forward, but the blade stops inches from its chest, halted by a shimmering field of crimson energy. The Hemarch leans close. "You fight with admirable fury," he whispers, "but you are still prey." It backhands Blade with inhuman strength, sending him crashing through a monument. Rubble collapses around him. The crimson beam narrows, focusing entirely on Blade now. Tendrils of energy wrap around his arms, his chest, his throat. He strains against them, muscles trembling. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he looks vulnerable. High above, on the Enterprise bridge, alarms blare. "Captain," Data's voice crackles weakly over comms. "We are contained." The Dominion is attempting to extract Blade's genetic material. Picard's hands grip the arms of his chair. Options. Mr. LaForgiodi works frantically at his console. The energy barrier's harmonics are tied directly to the flagship's core. If we fire on it, we risk destabilizing the planetary matrix entirely. And if we do nothing, Riker asks. Geordi doesn't look up. They get what they came for. On the planet below, Blade roars in defiance, veins glowing faintly as the extraction beam intensifies. The HEMA Council watches with clinical fascination. Imagine it, the leader murmurs. An empire that fears no star. Daka struggles to his feet, servos whining. He calculates probabilities in microseconds. There is only one viable solution. He taps his command. Captain, he says calmly, I recommend immediate orbital bombardment of our position. Picard's voice cuts through the chaos. That would kill you all. Data pauses only a fraction of a second. Not necessarily, sir. In the plaza, the crimson beam begins drawing blood directly from Blade's veins, lifting it in shimmering strands toward the sky. Blade grits his teeth. You want my blood? He growls. His eyes flare. Come and take it. What if the only way to save an entire planet was to fire on your own crew? On the bridge of the Enterprise, silence falls for half a heartbeat after Data's recommendation. Orbital bombardment. On their own people. On Blade. On a city already dying. Picard rises slowly from his chair. Cliff's plane, he commands. Data's voice, though distorted by interference, remains steady. The HEMARC barrier is synchronized to the flagship's energy matrix. A precisely calibrated quantum torpedo detonation within the beam's focal point would create a harmonic feedback loop. The barrier would collapse momentarily, and the blast radius Riker presses, lethal to organic life within 5 meters, Data replies. Worf is within 3. Blade is at the center. Picard closes his eyes for the briefest second. The weight of command presses down like gravity. Every life on the colony, every life on his ship. Mr. LaForge, he says quietly, can we narrow the yield? Geordi works furiously. I can shave it down by 17%, but it'll still hit them. On the surface, the crimson tendrils dig deeper into Blade's flesh. His blood rises in spirals of shimmering red, pulled toward the sky like a sacrificial offering. The HEMARC leader watches with fascination. Your resistance is extraordinary, it murmurs. Your pain receptors are heightened, yet you endure. Blade laughs through clenched teeth. You should see me on a bad day. Worf struggles against the invisible force pinning him. Captain fire. Data locks eyes with Blade across the plaza. In that instant, something unspoken passes between them, calculation meeting instinct. Blade gives the smallest nod. On the bridge, Picard's decision crystallizes. Target the beam's focal point. He orders, on my mark. The Enterprise shifts in orbit, aligning with surgical precision. Quantum torpedoes ready. Worf's replacement at tactical reports. Picard's voice is iron. Fire. A streak of blue-white light lances from the Enterprise, cutting through the atmosphere in a blazing arc. The HEMARC senses it a fraction too late. The torpedo impacts the crimson beam. The world erupts. A shockwave of energy explodes outward, shattering the barrier in a cascade of scarlet shards. The HEMARC Council is thrown violently across the plaza. Buildings collapse. The sky flickers between red and natural blue as the planetary matrix destabilizes. Blade hits the ground hard. The extraction tendrils severed mid-pull. Smoke and debris rain down around him. For a moment, there is only ringing silence, then coughing. Worf pushes himself upright, armor scorched but intact. I still live. Data rises next, left arm partially disabled but functional. As predicted, Blade lies on his back, staring up at the fractured sky. Blood trickles from the corner of his mouth. He starts laughing. Nice timing, he mutters. Above them, the flagship recoils as feedback surges through its hull. One of its spires fractures, venting crimson plasma into space. On the bridge of the Enterprise, cheers are cut short as new alarms erupt. Captain Geordi says urgently, the planetary matrix is destabilizing beyond projections. If it collapses completely, it'll trigger a chain reaction in the colony's power grid. Data's voice comes through again. The flagship's core is compensating. It is rerouting energy directly into the planet. Picard understands instantly. They're willing to destroy the colony rather than lose. On the surface, the HEMARC leader rises from the rubble. Its once pristine armor cracked. Its amber eyes burn brighter now, not with curiosity, but rage. You dare, it hisses. Blade stands slowly, sword still in hand. Ye says, I do. The remaining HEMARC converge, their movements less measured now, more feral. The explosion has damaged them, but it has also stripped away restraint. They attack together. What follows is not a skirmish, it is war in miniature. Worf charges one head-on, battleth, clashing against organic armor. Sparks and blood spray as Klingon fury meets ancient hunger. Data engages another, calculating every strike. adapting to impossible speed with mechanical precision. Blade takes the leader. Steel meets energy in a blinding clash. The Hemorrhac moves like liquid shadow, claws carving through air where Blade stood a heartbeat earlier. Blade counters with brutal efficiency, every strike aimed for the heart. You fight for a dying species, the Hemorrhac snarls. Blade ducks beneath a telekinetic blast, slicing upward and severing one of its elongated fingers. I've heard that before. The Hemorrhac retaliates, slamming Blade through the shattered fountain at the center of the plaza. Stone explodes outward. Above, the flagship's core begins glowing white-hot. On the Enterprise, Data's analysis updates in real time. Clifson, the flagship, is initiating destruction. Estimated detonation will render the planet uninhabitable. Picard's jaw tightens. Can we disable it? Negative. Its core is shielded by the remaining vessels. Riker steps forward. Then we take out the escorts. Picard nods. Engage. Space ignites with phaser fire as the Enterprise dives into the swarm of Sanguinar ships. Explosions ripple across the void. On the surface, Blade pins the Hemorrhac leader against a broken column, sword pressed against its chest. Call them off, he growls. The Hemorrhac laughs, even as blackened blood seeps from its wounds. You cannot stop ascension. The sky above them fractures as the flagship's core begins tearing open a new rift, larger than the first. Blade looks up. It's not just self-destruction, it's an invasion beacon, and something massive is beginning to push through from the other side. What if the ship pushing through that rift wasn't just another vessel, but the true master of the Sanguinar Dominion, and it had been waiting centuries for a universe like this? The sky splits open like a wound refusing to heal. Above Vega Colony 4, the fractured flagship tears itself apart to widen the rift. Space folds inward, crimson lightning spiderwebbing across the heavens. Through the expanding breach, something vast begins to emerge, larger than any Borg cube, darker than the void between stars. On the surface, even the Hemorrhac leader stops fighting. It turns its burning gaze upward and kneels. Behold, it whispers, reverent, the Crimson Sovereign. Blade follows its gaze. The shape pushing through the rift is not sleek like the others. It is ancient. Its hull resembles layered bone fused with living tissue, pulsing faintly as if breathing. Massive spires curve inward like claws, clutching at reality itself. Data's voice crackles over comms, strained but analytical. Captain, the incoming vessel exceeds 3 times the mass of the current flagship. Energy readings are astronomical. On the Enterprise bridge, the crew stares in stunned silence. Magnify, Picard orders. The view screen fills with the Sovereign's grotesque majesty. It emits waves of subspace distortion that rattle the Enterprise's shields. Geordi grips his console. His power output dwarfs anything we've faced. It's drawing energy directly from the rift. Riker's voice lowers. It's feeding on the tear between universes. Picard's expression hardens. Then we close it. Back on the surface, the Hemorrhac leader Rizaz, renewed fervor in its voice. You are too late, Daywalker. Our sovereign has consumed galaxies older than your species. This universe will kneel. Blade tightens his grip on his sword. Yado kneel. The Hemorrhac lunges again, empowered by the sovereign's arrival. Its speed doubles, claws slicing through the air with sonic cracks. Blade barely evades, rolling across broken stone before countering with a slash that cleaves through the creature's shoulder. Worf roars as he decapitates another Hemorrhac, its body disintegrating into ash mid-swing. Data restrains the last one with crushing force, servos straining as he holds it still. Blade, Worf shouts. Blade pivots, using the fountain's shattered base as leverage. As the Hemorrhac leader charges, he sidesteps at the last instant and drives his blade upward straight through its chest. Silver pierces ancient flesh. The Hemorrhac freezes, amber eyes wide. You are an aberration, it gasps. Blade leans close. I get that a lot. He twists the blade. The Hemorrhac erupts into ash, scattering across the plaza in a storm of grey. For a fleeting second, the plaza is quiet. Then the Sovereign speaks. Its voice doesn't travel through air. It vibrates through bone, through thought itself. Daywalker Blade stiffens. You carry the seed of our evolution. You will not be wasted. A beam of pure crimson light descends from orbit, thicker than before. It slams into the plaza, engulfing Blade before Worf or Dado can react. Blade, Worf bellows. The light lifts him off the ground, suspending him in midair. Unlike before, this beam does not extract. It transforms. Blade's veins ignite with searing heat. His hybrid blood reacts violently to the Sovereign's energy. His scream echoes across the burning city. On the Enterprise, alarms spike. Captain, data reports. Blade's cellular structure is undergoing rapid mutation. The Sovereign is attempting to forcibly evolve him. Picard grips the armrest. Can we disrupt the beam? Geordi shakes his head. It's phased between dimensions. We can't lock on. In the plaza, Blade's vision blurs. Memories flashily waves soaked in blood. The face of his mother, years of hunting in endless night. Sovereign's presence presses against his mind, vast and ancient. Join us. You will never hunt alone again. Blade clenches his teeth, fighting the intrusion. I don't join monsters. He growls through agony. The Sovereign's energy surges, trying to overwrite his DNA, to rewrite him into something new, something obedient. Data calculates at impossible speed. Captain, he says suddenly, Blade's hybrid genome is resisting full conversion. It is creating unstable feedback within the Sovereign's beam. Picard's eyes sharpen. Can we amplify it? Data nods slightly. If we modulate our deflector dish to emit a counter-frequency based on Blade's altered DNA pattern, we may turn the Sovereign's own energy against it. It could kill him, Crusher warns overcomes. Picard's voice is heavy but resolute. If we do nothing, it will kill millions. On the surface, Worf shields his eyes from the blinding light. He cannot endure this much longer. Blade's body convulses mid-up. His eyes flare bright red, not with the Sovereign's control, but with defiance. He roars, forcing his arms outward against the beam's grip. You want my blood? He shouts into the sky. Choke on it. On the Enterprise, Picard gives the order. Modulate deflector. Fire. A brilliant pulse erupts from the Enterprise's deflector dish, lancing down through orbit and striking the crimson beam. For one breathless second, nothing happens. Then, the beam despises energy, ricochets backward along its own path straight into the Sovereign. The massive ship shudders as cracks of white-hot light fracture its hull. Its telepathic voice shifts from dominance to fury. Impossible. Blade drops from the collapsing beam, slamming into the plaza below. Worf catches him before he hits the ground. Above them, the rift begins to spiral out of control. The Sovereign thrashes within it, half emerged, half trapped between universes. Data's voice trembles not with fear, but with the strain of calculation. Captain, the feedback loop is accelerating. The rift is collapsing. Picard watches as space itself begins folding inward around the monstrous vessel. If it implodes, Geordi says quietly, it'll take the planet with it. On the surface, Blade forces himself upright, leaning on his sword. His body smokes faintly, veins still glowing. He looks up at the dying sky. Then we finish it, he says hoarsely. Because the Sovereign is not retreating. He's preparing one final surge, and this time, it's aiming directly at the Enterprise. What if the only way to stop the Crimson Sovereign was for Blade to leave this universe forever? The sky above Vega Colony 4 is no longer red. It is unraveling. The rift convulses violently, swallowing starlight as the Crimson Sovereign forces more of its colossal form through the collapsing tier. Its fractured hull bleeds energy into space, yet it does not retreat. It adapts. It feeds on instability. On the bridge of the Enterprise, the deck shudders as a wave of subspace distortion slams into their shields. Shields at 60%, Geordi calls out. The Sovereign's voice booms across every frequency, bypassing communication channels entirely. If we fall, we take this universe with us. A beam of concentrated crimson energy lances toward the Enterprise, far more powerful than anything before. Evasive maneuvers, Riker shouts. The Enterprise banks hard, but the beam grazes the saucer section. Consoles explode in sparks. Crew members are thrown from their stations. Structural integrity failing on decks 5 through 9. Someone yells. Picard grips his chair, eyes locked on the view screen. Return fire. Target the Sovereign's core fractures. Phasers and torpedoes streak into the monstrous vessel, detonating against its cracked armor. But each explosion only seems to feed the rift's instability. On the surface below, Blade watches the chaos overhead. Worf steadies him. He should be dead. Blade smirks faintly despite the blood at his lips. Story of my life. Dado approaches, his damaged arm sparking faintly. Blade, the Sovereign's existence in this universe is anchored to your arrival. Your genetic signature created the initial breach. It is using you as a constant across dimensions. Blade's eyes narrow. So as long as I'm here, it can recalibrate the rift. Data finishes. The implication settles heavily. Cliff looks up at the Sovereign clawing its way into reality, at the Enterprise fighting to survive, at the burning city around them. He exhales slowly. There's always a catch. Above, the Sovereign charges another blast, this one brighter, denser, aimed directly at the planet's surface. If that hits, data says, the planetary crust will destabilize. Worf looks to Blade. Speak plainly. Blade meets Data's gaze. If I go back through the rift, it loses its anchor. Data nods. Probability of complete dimensional severance, 73%. And the other 27, Worf asks. Data's voice is calm. Total annihilation of both universes along the fault line. Blade laughs softly. I never liked safe bets. On the Enterprise, Giardi's voice reads his captain. The Sovereign's core is spiking. It's about to fire. Picard watches the away team's life signs flicker on the display. Transport them back. He orders. Transporter lock is unstable. O'Brien's voice crackles over comms. The rift's interference is scrambling the pattern buffers. On the surface, the ground begins to crack as gravitational forces warp around the plaza. The Sovereign's final beam gathers overhead like a dying star. Blade looks at Worf. Take care of your ship, he says quietly. Worf's jaw tightens. A warrior does not abandon the battlefield. This isn't your battlefield, Blade replies. It's mine. He taps his combat. Picard, he says. On the bridge, the captain leans forward. I am here. You were right about one thing, Blade says, staring up at the collapsing rift. This universe is built on hope. Another tremor shakes the planet. But hope doesn't mean much if there's nothing left to protect. Picard understands. If you do this, he says carefully, there may be no return. Blade slides his sword into its sheath. I've lived in the dark my whole life, Captain. If jumping back into it saves yours. He glances at the burning colony one last time. Then it's worth it. The Sovereign fires. A column of annihilating energy descends toward the planet. At the same instant, Blade runs. He sprints straight toward the epicenter of the rift's pull, toward the spiraling vortex, tearing the sky apart. Debris lifts around him as gravity fractures. Worf shouts his name, but the wind steals the sound. Data calculates trajectories in real time. Captain, he says urgently, if Blade enters the rift at peak instability, the dimensional feedback will cascade through the Sovereign's core. Picard's voice is barely above a whisper. And him. Data pauses, unknown. Blade leaps. For a suspended heartbeat, he is silhouetted against the raging crimson skycode whipping behind him, sword at his back, a lone hunter facing a cosmic god. Then he plunges into the rift. The universe screams. Light detonates outward from the breach, swallowing the Sovereign's beam mid-descent, and the colossal ship convulses as cracks spider across its hull, energy imploding inward. On the Enterprise, shields collapse entirely as the shockwave slams into them. Brace! Riker shouts. The Sovereign lets out one final, furious psychic roar, and then it is pulled backward. The rift snaps shut like a slammed door. Silence. The crimson sky fades back to blue. Debris rains harmlessly into the atmosphere. The remaining Sanguinar vessels disintegrate without their master's anchor. On the bridge, systems slowly come back online. Smoke drifts from shattered consoles. Casualty reports begin to filter in. Picard stands slowly. Status Geordi exhales shakily. The Sovereign's gone. Rift sealed. Planet stabilizing. Data scans for one more life sign. There is none. On the surface, Worf stares at the empty sky where the rift once burned. He fought with honor, the Klingon says quietly. Picard looks out at the stars, his expression unreadable. In another universe, in a corridor of infinite darkness between realities, a single figure tumbles through shadow. Blade opens his eyes, and something ancient opens its eyes with him. What if Blade didn't fall back into his own universe, but into something far worse, the place the Crimson Sovereign truly came from? There is no sky, no stars, no up, no down. Blade drifts through a corridor of fractured light and endless shadow, his body weightless, his senses distorted. Around him, shards of broken realities, flicker visions of worlds consumed, civilizations drained dry, galaxies reduced to silent graveyards. The space between universes is not empty. It is crowded with echoes. Blade forces himself upright in the void. boots finding impossible footing on nothing at all. His veins still glow faintly from the Sovereign's failed transformation. His hybrid blood burns like liquid fire. He is alive, but he is not home. Ahead of him, something moves. A massive shape coalesces from darkness, not a ship this time, not an army, a throne, carved from the bones of dead stars, and seated upon it, a figure far older than the Hemart Council, older than the Sovereign. Its form is tall, draped in living crimson armor that pulses like a heart. Its face is almost human, almost. Its eyes are endless. "You are persistent," it says, voice calm and infinite. Blade doesn't reach for his sword. "Not yet. Let me guess," he mutters. "You're the one in charge." The figure inclines its head slightly. "I am the first hunger." The name resonates like a cosmic truth. I existed before your kind discovered fire, before stars ignited in this quadrant. The Sovereign was but an extension of my will. Blade glances around at the shattered fragments of devoured realities. "So this is where you feed." The first hunger rises from its throne. The void bends around it. This is where evolution begins. It steps closer, examining Blade as though he were a rare specimen. "You fascinate me. Neither fully human nor fully of my design. You resist corruption. You weaponize your curse." Blade's jaw tightens. "You talk too much." Mythos Hunger smiles faintly. "In your universe, you hunted my scattered children. In this one, you disrupted my ascension. Across infinite realities, you're an irritation, a pause, but also a possibility." Blade finally draws his sword. His silver blade glows faintly even here, reacting to the overwhelming presence before him. "You want my blood again?" he asks. "No," the first hunger replies softly. "I want your choice." The void shifts, forming images around them. The Enterprise, scarred but intact, orbiting Vega Colony IV. Picard, standing on the bridge, gazing at the stars in solemn reflection. Worf, overseeing repairs, silent but proud. The colony below rebuilding, survivors helping one another in defiance of extinction. They will face other threats, the first hunger says. The Borg, the Dominion. Wars that fracture their fragile unity. The image changes. Blade's original Earth, dark alleyways, familiar rooftops, the endless hunt he knows too well. "You could return there," the entity continues. "Resume your small war in a single world." Then the visions expand further. Countless universes, some already infiltrated, some untouched. "You have seen what I am capable of," the first hunger whispers. "Join me, not as prey, not as servant, as equal. Together, we will refine existence, call weakness, shape evolution." Blade studies the visions. He sees fear. He sees power. He sees the temptation of ending the hunt by ruling it. "You think I fight because I hate vampires?" he asks quietly. To the first hunger tilts its head. "I fight," Blade says, "because nobody else can." He raises his sword. "And I don't share the night." The first hunger's expression shifts not to anger, to inevitability. "So be it." The void erupts. Reality fragments into razor-sharp shards as Blade charges forward. The first hunger moves without moving, warping space itself to evade each strike. Blade's sword slices through echoes, through projections, but not yet through the core. "You cannot kill hunger." The entity's voice reverberates. "It is fundamental." Blade pivots, adapting mid-battle. Every swing of his blade leaves ripples in the dimensional fabric. His hybrid blood reacts violently to the void's energy, amplifying him beyond anything he has ever been. "Maybe," he grunts, blocking a telekinetic wave that would shatter a planet, "but I can starve it." He changes tactics. Instead of striking at the first hunger directly, Blade drives his sword into the void, itself into the connective tissue binding this dimension together. The silver blade ignites. The void screams. Cracks form not in space, but in the entity's control over it. "You would destroy the bridge between worlds?" the first hunger asks, voice sharpening. Blade twists the blade deeper. "You said it yourself," he replies. "I'm an irritation." Energy surges uncontrollably. The throne of Starbones fractures. The visions collapse one by one. "If this realm falls," the first hunger warns, "you will be lost between realities. Forever." Blade looks up, eyes steady. "Good." With a final roar, he channels every ounce of mutated, defiant blood in his body into the blade. The void detonates. Light pure, and blinding consumes everything. On the bridge of the Enterprise, weeks later, Captain Picard stands alone in his ready room. A small crystalline container rests on his desk inside it, a fragment of blackened metal recovered from Vega Colony's ruins, the last trace of the Sanguinar Dominion. Data enters quietly. "Captain," he says. "Long-range scans confirm no further interdimensional anomalies." Picard nods slowly. "Then he succeeded." Data tilts his head. "It is statistically improbable that Blade survived." Picard allows himself the faintest smile. "Perhaps," he says, "but I have learned never to underestimate a man who chooses to stand against the darkness. Far beyond their senses, beyond galaxies and time itself, a single spark drifts in the infinite, a spark that refuses to go out, and somewhere, in the deepest shadow between realities, something hunts, not as conqueror, not as king, but as Blade, the vampire hunter in deep space, and the darkness will never feel safe again."